One of the things which came to my mind during listening to you, I'm aware, as all of us are, that our scientific investigations largely depend on the availability of appropriate methodology to even study complex systems, which then sometimes become simple. So methodology, develop new methodology, like for example, the accelerator in the CERN can turn something extremely complex into something almost becoming simple. Do you agree with that?
Provided that you accept what I have tried to explain, namely that no matter what you do, the point is that the greatest discovery nowadays would be to find something which no physicist in the world has ever been able to imagine. This is the basic point of my last question. Now, despite all we are doing, during 50 years at CERN, we have been living with the illusion of understanding nuclear physics, which means the nuclear forces. And this is not a trivial point, because nuclear forces generate the Hiroshima bomb and the reactors, which produce a factor 1 million in the power of mankind. Nevertheless, what has been done at CERN? Discoveries which no one had been able to imagine, like quantum chromodynamics. When I started to do physics, I was told that protons and neutrons are elementary particles. Now we know that in a proton there is a universe, not one particle, a universe, the subnuclear universe. Suppose this was a proton. Instead of few meters, you take few Fermis. You take a factor 10 to minus 13, and we are inside the proton. Inside the proton, the laws and regularities are fascinating, but no physicist had ever imagined this. How we discovered this? By bringing our brain against a wall. We could not understand what was going on. And this is the reason why I believe, I'm convinced, that the greatest discovery now in CERN will not be to find out what we think, for example, the superworld. I'm mathematically involved in the study of the superworld, and I belong to the group of physicists who think that the superworld is there. But the great discovery would be something which has nothing to do with the superworld, which would open new horizon in CERN with the LHC.
Are there interventions? Yes, please, Roberto.
In biology, of course, it's all history, because it depends on the history of evolution and how we got to be, for example, human beings. So I think this thinking that history is complexity, in physics you extract the eternal truths that have come from the beginning of the Big Bang or creation or whatever. But maybe in other aspects of earth sciences, the history will have become very important. If we had some kind of accident of meteorites and things. So then, in that case, it will not be so much like biology. But human history, like the Sarajevo analogy, is quite different, I think. Probably the same things would have happened, and we could have had a war, I think, in the first war, even without Sarajevo. So it's a comment.
The chairman asked me to go to the conclusion, but in chapter 7, I do discuss telegraphically chaos, evolution, and history, where this point is indeed at the central question of the chapter. Because confusion exists when people speak about chaos, when speak about evolution and history. For example, how can it be that everybody believes that everything is understood on the origin of life, while there are hundreds of people working on what is called the problem of minimal life, namely how many pieces of inert matter you need in order to be the most elementary example of life, which is elementary cell. The number is not 1 or 2, it's 10 to the 11, which is the limit for quantum entanglement. There's no agreement on this because people think that the number is much higher. Now, what means 10 to the 11? Take 10 to 11 equal to 1. In order to describe the evolution of an elementary particle discovered in 1897 by Thomson and called the smallest amount of electricity called the electron. In order to describe the electron, which is an elementary particle, you need 4 differential equations coupled. How can it be that people claim that we understand the origin of life without ever writing an equation? The evolution is a very important point in order to compare our way of understanding nature, including the basic constituents of nature like chaos and evolution, in terms of modern science.
Well,